they should consider the priorities on raising public awareness on issues of climate change adaptations and mitigating.
Slowly, please. Raising public
awareness on issues of climate change adaptation and mitigation matters in the communities, and helping them to know how to adapt the climate change impacts. Here we have considered the extractive sector. That means...
Sorry, come again on the last sentence. Public awareness, adaptation in communities, and then?
And then help them knowing how to adapt climate change impacts.
And this is at policy level. That means, what are we doing? Are we having a policy to address how that is being executed?
Now here we have considered developing the policy, but it will take too long. Now here it's just raising awareness on those issues.
It's an action item.
It's an action item, yeah. It's an activity.
Okay.
And this we have considered only two sectors: mine, extractive industry. Extractive sector and the agriculture.
Okay.
Extractive meaning from mining activities, processing of minerals, and the recycling. The whole thing on mining. Should I continue on point number 3? Number 3 is gap analysis on climate change related legislations. This will help understand what we have and what we don't have in those legislations on the issues of climate change laws, and later on we can recommend on a way forward on how to harmonize these laws.
So gap analysis is also an activity, all right, towards like developing a policy or developing legislation.
Harmonizing them.
Harmonize.
We can harmonize if there's a need of developing, we can develop.
Great.
We've considered the keys ones like Mining Act, Environmental Act, those shouldn't be forgotten, the land laws.
All right.
This should also consider gender issues, climate change, and the community.
Is it the same term as benchmarking? No. Is it different when you do gap analysis?
What do you mean when saying the benchmark?
Benchmarking tends to be seeing where you are from. Benchmarking tends to, they're related, but benchmarking is usually seeing where you are in relation to where you could be and your foundational place, essentially. Whereas gap analysis is more just looking at what's missing within a certain subset of whatever it is, which here would be legislation. So that they're related, but one is more of an exercise and one is more of a analysis of your foundational place. That's how we tend to use it, but obviously they're terminology that could be adapted to whatever works best.
So gap analysis.
Thank you for confusing us.
No benchmarking, gap analysis. All right.
And we can also link this with the organizations that are doing the interventions on climate change issues and consider partnering with them. Now the thing here that we want to do is we need a review and analysis. This can be done to identify those organizations that are doing the interventions on climate change, and then we can consider contacting them and establishing a partnership.
Okay. And I am hearing this as an activity from, the policy makers, policy level, government entities and stakeholders, right? Thank you. Do we have any more? Thank you very much. Can we please give them a round of applause? Do we want to respond to what they have presented? Add, challenge? Anybody, Mr. Luhende? I'm sure you have something to say. Quaresma, do you have anything to say to respond to what has been presented by policymakers? Please use the mic on your table. presenting. I wonder if you're paying attention to the policy board. Mr.
We have
Luhende.
done it already.
Mr. Luhende,
Yes,
can we align? You are not presenting. I asked whether you have any questions or response to what has been presented.
No, as for now, not.
Thank you. What about the community grassroots group? Mheshimiwa Diwani, kuna maswali, ushauri kwenye kilicholetwa hapa? No? Any questions from Jennifer's table? Clarification, maybe additions?
I was just listening. It looks very much like our project is now, I think. Like Professor Majumba had done a law review when we started this project. So it would be something similar, I think. Our first approach would be to probably do that, a law review on what exists. I know the gentleman from the Vice President's office listed a whole bunch of strategies, plans that are already existing. So that would be a great place to start. And then a harmonization of that and looking at the gaps there. So that's great. I think we would do further work thereafter if we have time. Usually these projects run from about 5 to 7 years. So we would have more work with the government with technical assistance using Canadian technical experts like we have around the table to work with them on even regulatory frameworks or rolling out their strategies to the districts. So that could possibly be another activity that we would do in relation to the harmonization of laws and development of legal frameworks. That's thanks.
Thank you. I guess we have ourselves a project. So far, so good. Okay, shall we now move to the I don't know, I'm trying to make a meaningful flow of discussion. So I don't know which one will be the best group to go to, Jennifer. The trainers? Trainers, okay. Mr. Luhende, whoever is presenting now, please have the floor.
Good. Okay, thank you. We had hot discussions on, and we proposed a number of activities which we think as the trainers it can leverage to see project results and to facilitate community climate adaptation or transitioning. And we have quite a number of them. And one of the activities we think one is we have the activities on the legal sector reform on extractive industry relating to climate change.
Did you get that? He started. Yeah. She's writing, so please be mindful of her hand flow. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I should start?
No, just proceed. She's capturing.
Okay. The second one, we have to mainstreaming climate change adaptation in local government authority planning.
I think you lost me. Can you start with the first one first, and then give a brief description? And ya kwanza.
Ya kwanza umesema ni iache au niseme?
Iseme tena. Tafadhali.
Yeah, okay. The first one was legal sector reform on extractive industries to capture the issue of climate change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, Larry?
Yeah, particularly on critical minerals. Yeah, yeah.
So how critical minerals can contribute to technology that is green, and what's the linkage between the legal sector that I can write here?
We say that we need legal reform because right now we don't have the legal framework which address or cater for critical minerals itself. So once we have that, it will also be very easier to link it on climate issues.
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes sense? Okay, thank you. Now on to the second point, please. If you can.
On the second point, I said that we need to mainstreaming climate change adaptation in local government authorities planning. So whatever we have, we should mainstream to the local level. The priority of local government authorities should mainstream the issue of climate adaptation.
How do you do that? Practically, I mean, do you do that via legislation? Do you do, maybe I'm this slow, but do you get it, Laura, the mainstreaming aspect?
Yes, I think I understand. So, do I understand correctly? What you're saying is that you need to integrate climate change adaptation or the concept of it into all of your business planning, but it needs to bring down to the local level. So instead of being just at the national government level, the local governments need to actually integrate it into all their planning. And by mainstreaming, you mean just making it normalized, that they do that as a course of action in everything that they do?
Yeah, sure. It's clear. I think that it doesn't need a lot
I'm
of
just a
explanation.
moderator, Baraka.
Oh.
You're the expert, so pardon me if I'm complicating matters because I don't understand them on my level. Next.
Okay. Next, we need to create local climate champions from the community levels. Those who have already having the adaptations activities to contribute to climate change, we need to have the forum of them, and then we help to disseminate that knowledge to community levels.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Next.
right. Basing on the discussion yesterday, we see that the women are the ones who are affected much on climate issues or climate changes. So we think we should have the activities on the study or visibility study on how women have impacted by climate change. That's okay. So another one is training on ESA reporting and tracking. ECG, sorry, ESG.
ECG? ESG?
ESG. Yes. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Another one, we think we should facilitate linkage climate smart agriculture and other sectors.
Mr. Terence, do you want to respond? Oh, are we together? Oh.
Are we ready?
Yes, next please.
So I think the other one they have already mentioned by the first group. We have the sensitization program and the capacity building to the community around the area of climate change, because we discovered that there's a mismatch of understanding on the concept of climate change by the local. So I think that would be also another activity in order to transform from or to do climate change transitioning. We should also make sure that our people understand better what does it really mean, so that they can support whatever program we are implementing there. And we had also, in addition to that, we had also media program to help to sensitize the community through various means like media, televisions, radios, and whatever. The local one, basing on the local area, because they're the one who can get the frequency there.
Contextualizing, right?
Yeah, contextualizing.
That's the term of the day. Yesterday and today. Okay. Is that the last one?
I think that's the last one because others, as already mentioned by the first group, we can't afford to repeat the same.
Thank you very much. Can we please give them a round of applause? There are two ladies in that group. Do you want to say anything for the sake of it? Since it's just two of you. Do you want to say anything? Did the gentleman...
I would just agree with what has been presented because we are part of the contribution. So it's okay for us.
Thank you. Inclusion observed. All right. Does anyone want to maybe respond to what has been presented? Mr. Terence. Can you use a mic on your table, please?
Hello. I just wanted to get a clarification from the group because I've been seeing them, hearing them referring critical minerals in their context. What is critical mineral? What are the critical minerals?
So, we understand that you are geologists, but we respond just for the sake of other people. I think you know.
Okay, thank you, but I think the issue of critical minerals, the Natural Resource Governance Institute created a classification for Tanzania, but the classifications that have been made in critical minerals in the simplest of language and the time sensitivity is the minerals that facilitate renewable energy technology or clean technology. So you look at nickel, platinum group of metals, we look at cobalt and coltan, you look at uranium, you look at, what is this from Zambia, copper, and etc. So these minerals have always been there since time immemorial, but now they're critical because of the issues of climate change and the energy transition. So currently in Tanzania, I believe they fall under the mining law and the mining development policy or whatever laws that are implemented. But as a group, we thought that it is critical to have its own type of policy according to the African Development Vision and Tanzania Development Vision 2025, because right now they are strategic, they are critical to climate change and the energy transition. Thank you.
You want to respond?
Maybe just a piece of advice. We have to be very careful because actually, as far as mining legislation is concerned in Tanzania, we don't have that class of the critical minerals. But another thing which I wanted just to point to be on the same page, is very important. Something critical, I'm not denying that nickel is critical, but critical to, is it critical to Tanzania or critical to the Western industries or European industries? Because actually when it comes to critical, definitely, that's why I asked in your context. Because I know, for example, America, they have critical mineral regulation. And the critical mineral in America not necessarily should be the same with Canada. It depends on the Canadian demands, industrial demands, and also US industrial demands. But in Tanzania, for sure, the so-called critical minerals, they're not really critical in this country. And you have referred in the African Mining Vision. Under the African Mining Vision, if you read it critically, you will find out the critical minerals in the African Mining Vision mostly are industrial minerals. Believe me, go and read it again. It's not these technological minerals like rare earth elements. I know how important they are, but it depends with the level of the countries. Can we consume rare earth elements in Tanzania? We cannot. That's why we have to produce and export. They go to Japan, they go to Europe for further processing, in order to make these electrical cars, but we don't have industry that can assimilate these minerals. So to me, as Terence, in my opinion, rare earth elements, nickel, cobalt, they're not critical. They're critical for other countries, but they're not critical for Tanzania. Thank you.
Sorry.
May I please interject? I'm the moderator. Mr. Terence, thank you. I am trying to loop in and connect what you're saying. I know there's, from the definition point of view, you're correct that if you say the mining legislation has not defined something as critical, then you're correct and accurate in terms of the law. But I think from where he's coming from, he's looking at the context that we are in right now, when we're talking about renewable energy and, you know, climate transitioning. Does what he has pointed out actually become critical, considering the fact that we don't exist in vacuum. We're not an island, so we are connected. So eventually, if we have those minerals that in the world context are described as critical, and we have not yet, in our context, defined as critical, there might come a point when, you know, someone wants perhaps to exploit them for export purposes. Shall we just close our eyes and say, oh, not, this is not defined? You know, so I think what you're saying is accurate, and what he's saying is also accurate. But if we can leverage on both of this information, we can come up with something. Actually, I think, Jennifer, you I don't know if it makes sense, but from what I'm seeing, just so there's no back and forth, I know you really want to respond. Yeah. But I think I get both your perspectives. He's right and you're right. But we have to meet somewhere in between and make sure that we don't exist as an island, because ultimately, you know, greenhouse gases all over the world, we are not an island. It will come and, you know, we will catch up. There's been tropical cyclones and all those things happening close to the Indian Ocean. And we got really agitated over here, you know, paying attention, watching the weather predictions, really afraid that the cyclone might hit at our coast. But we are not necessarily the creators of it, we are just victims. So I don't think we can really close our eyes, but maybe the timing would be the issue. I don't know if Mr. Terence will bring justice to yeah. But that could be just my opinion as the moderator. You really want to respond. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay.
I'm not just responding to him, but to everything. And that is our problem as, I think, as, let me just say, Africans, because critical minerals, the issue is not whether they're important to us or not. The issue is the demand. We produce gold, silver, but if there's no demand for gold and silver, they're worthless. The World Bank says by 2050, critical minerals will increase 500% in demand. The biggest investment Tanzania had in the last 2 years in the mining industry has been in the Kabanga project, of which it's on critical minerals. So if we're already complaining about the current laws on minerals themselves, so if we cannot jump on this euphoria right now and create policies that advocate for these critical minerals in a different perspective, because they are sensitive to climate change, not to gold, to climate change, not to other type of minerals, I think we will miss out the way we missed out on the last phase of minerals. So that's why I said for the project, it will need to create policy suggestions. And when he mentioned something like they're not identified and they're not mentioned, that is the gap that the project should even address in the first place. Because yeah, that is all I'm saying.
Thank you, Dr. Rukonde. You're right. And he has given out very critical information, which now creates an opportunity for you know, for what we are trying to do here. So, Mr. Terence, thank you for you know, presenting that fact, because then it creates the stage for what he's saying, you know, so that we, you know, we are aligned and we are moving towards a certain direction for the benefit of, you know, preparation's sake, right? Okay. Is there any other response from Mr. Terence or anybody, Mr. Isakwisa, madam? Anyone wants to react? You might have to wear your device, because I don't know the next group. Are you using Kiswahili or English? It's your turn.
I think I'll use both. Am I on? Hello? Am I on?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I think I may use both, but let's see how it goes. And so we have discussed a couple of points here that we think they're very critical for the next phase. One of them being capacity building. I know it has been talked about, and other participants have talked about it a bit, but here we are looking at, okay, what we are suggesting is 360 dimensional kind of capacity building aspect, meaning we shouldn't just tackle climate change as the way it is, or just as a one big jargon, but breaking it down to every stakeholder. Let's say local government should be built concerning this. Neliko, Taoma, women champions should be trained concerning this differently. School children, primary school, secondary school should be training on these things at their own levels. Religious leaders, celebrities, taking a whole 360 approach on how people see, view, or understand climate changes. And not only understanding, but also cater for what impacts, or what impact are we having from the whole jargon climate change. So hapa tumekubaliana na wadau wamekubali kwamba isiwe tu term ya kusema capacity building, kwamba watu wanajengewa uwezo wa kuweza kujua. Iwe ni more than that, kwamba hawa watu waangaliwe kwenye different aspects zao, wafundishwe kwamba je, kwako wewe climate change ni nini, mabadiliko ya tabia nchi kwako ni nini, na yanakuhusuje wewe kama wewe. Tusiseme tu overall watu wafundishwe hivyo na we are done. Lakini pia kuangalia sectors ambazo zinaingiliana, kwa mfano ofisi ya wasema ni ofisi za madini, ofisi za mambo ya misitu, wakilishi wa makampuni ya madini, makampuni makubwa ya madini, wote hao kwa pamoja waweze kujengewa capacity ya kuweza kujua hii climate change au haya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ni nini haswa, na yanatuimpactije wote katika hizo sehemu mbalimbali. Lakini kingine ilikuwa ni encourage ESG kwa pamoja ili iweze kuwa norm.
Sorry. Thank you. She's taking notes. I just want to check whether we're in line. Are you getting the point? We're good? Okay. Proceed.
Okay. Another one is to encourage ESG na iwe ni norm kwenye makampuni yetu sana sana locally yanao operate kwenye hizi maeneo ambao kuna tuseme Geita for this point, kwamba kwenye maeneo ambayo ya huko zile local companies are encouraged kwenye hili. Lakini pia cha tatu ilikuwa ni more on applicability of it, kwamba one, encourage sustainable mining practices. This is by training members ambao wapo kwenye hizo mining communities namna ya kufanya practice za mining ambazo zinaendana na hii theme ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Kwa mfano, we can't just talk about discouraging mercury uses without providing an alternative of it. Lakini tukiangalia kuna best practices out there ambazo zinaendelea, na kuna nchi kama South Africa zimeadapt, nchi kama Ghana wameadapt concerning the usage of mercury kwenye ku amalgamate gold. For instance, the use of shaking tables. Mwanamke akitumia mercury ana capture 15 to 20% ya gold ambayo iko kwenye gold ore. But akitumia shaking table anaweza ku capture up to 85% without using mercury. Sasa best practices kama hizi tukiweza kuzichukua na kuzipeleka kwenye society na zikawa zinafanywa kazi, inaweza pia ina combat sio only climatic changes issues but economical, environmental, lakini pia financial. Kwa hiyo we should consider such measures, na sio kwamba tu iende kwa kila mtu. Tunaweza tukafanya one pilot study kwa a group of women miners na kuona how it goes, then we have a best practice in our own country ambayo inaweza kuwa adapted then to other regions or to other mines.
May I interject?
Sure.
Am I hearing technology transition?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Now, hiyo kumbuka hapa tunakuja na key output in terms of mradi kwenye climate transitioning. Sasa tunapoenda kwenye community ya women miners na concept ya technology transitioning, tunataka nini? Tunataka funding, tunataka kupeleka uelewa kwamba jamani, women miners, you can actually transition technology wise to maximize your proceeds, or do we want to raise funds so that these women can have access to that fund? I would like to get some clarity on that.
On this, we discussed on both approach, because remember, tunaongelea 3-6 dimension. You train them concerning the available technologies and what next. Having fund or a pool of fund whereby hizo machines zitaletwa. Na hizo machines zisije tu kwamba kusema, it's not kwamba having the whole of Geita or the whole of Shinyanga having those machines. We can just have one pilot project whereby everyone can learn, or the whole country can learn from. Okay. That's what we are looking forward to.
Okay. My other concern would be, how have you established this need? Is there maybe a need for benchmarking? Because, you know, is this feedback you're getting from the women? How do you know, my concern is going to the community with solutions, assuming this is what they want and this is what they need in the context. But is there maybe a need to do some benchmarking to understand what is on the ground? What were the contributions from the women on that aspect? And from your experience also, because you've been there for a while, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Do you already know for a fact that these are the gaps, or do you maybe need to? John, you want to interject as well? Sorry, there's another interjection.
When this issue came up just yesterday, I did some quick research, and this need is identified by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as an issue in Africa and elsewhere worldwide. That it contributes something like 15% of all worldwide mercury contamination in the environment, and that there's another organization called the Global Environmental Facility, which is providing fund to teach people alternative ways of recovering gold instead of using mercury. So the need has been identified internationally.
Okay, so the inhibitor to transitioning has been what? The funding?
I think there are three things. One is probably that from our perspective, the one might be a regulatory requirement, so that if countries were to ban the use of mercury for mineral processing, which I think it has been done in many countries, or strictly regulated, but then you have to provide people with an alternative to using that, which may be using shaker tables or other sluice boxes or other kinds of equipment, which may generate higher returns. But then how does someone afford to have that piece of equipment and operate it? And from a program perspective, do you need to have, say, a local or women's mining cooperative or organization that can afford to have and operate this piece of equipment and refine as a group and recover more metal and have a better outcome for everyone, environmentally and economically?
All right. Pardon my ignorance. I'm learning. I'm trying to probe also so that we can have like relevant outputs and issues. Thank you. Please proceed. Unless there's someone else who wants to interject, contribute, ask a question. Okay, please proceed.
Okay. And another point that we discussed ilikuwa ni training on the usage of alternative charcoal. I guess hii inaweza ikaenda hand in hand na what Stamiko is doing, lakini kuongeza nguvu katika kutrain watu, na hii inaweza ikasaidia kupunguza ukataji miti, ingawa ukataji miti kwenye maeneo ya migodi sio tu kwenye matumizi ya mkaa. bali ni kuanzia kwenye matimba ambayo yana support mines na mpaka kwenye uzalishaji kwenye kilimo. Lakini tukianza na kitu kimoja kimoja inaweza kawa rahisi kuweza kuexpand. Kwa hiyo ku train out kuhusu alternative means za mkaa, na lakini pia ku encourage proper usage ya agricultural land, kwamba kuna namna gani au mifumo gani ya kilimo ambayo inaweza kusaidia katika kupunguza hili tatizo la mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Lakini pia ilikuwa ni kutrain namna ya kutunza vyanzo vya maji, na hii imekuja kwamba wachimbaji wengi, kwa mfano umetolewa Nyarugusu, wanachimba na kufanya ukamatishaji kwa kutumia mercury, lakini wanafanya katika maeneo ambayo yako near vyanzo vya maji, ambayo ni hatari kwa ile jamii iliyoko pale. Je, tunaweza tukafanyaje? Suggestion iliyotoka ni kuelimisha watu athari za hicho kinachofanyika, lakini pia ku encourage au kufundisha watu namna ya kutumia mimea ambayo inafyonza hizi sumu kwenye udongo katika hizo maeneo au katika sehemu hizo ambazo zina vyanzo vya maji. Mmoja wapo ilikuwa ni kama miti kama mustard au hata canola, ambayo pia ni best practice kwenye baadhi ya nchi. South Africa pia wametumia na Ghana pia wametumia kupanda hiyo miti kwenye baadhi ya sehemu zilizo pembezoni mwa vyanzo vya maji ambapo viko sehemu za migodi. So far ni hivyo.
Very good. Asante sana kwa mawazo hayo na issues ambazo mmeweza kuziibua. Na washukuru. Please give them a round of applause for bringing out those very valid observations and issues. Does anyone want to respond? Okay. Do you want to say anything maybe to... No? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's that will mark the near the end of our two-day program. I want to thank you for your cooperation with me as your moderator for the past 2 days. You've been attentive, you've participated, and you've offered me a lot of cooperation, which I really appreciate. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our partners who have been here and bearing with us despite small glitches here and there, language barriers and all that. But I think so far we are doing great. On behalf of TLS CEO, who unfortunately could not make it, but there is announcements, housekeeping announcements. You want to?